Hi, I'm Terry Anderson, the John and Jean Denault Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution. I spend part of my year here and the rest in Montana, where I was the president of the Property and Environment Research Center. I'm an avid outdoorsman and enjoy hunting, hiking, fishing, and all manner of environmental amenities. When people see an environmental problem, their reaction is regulate it. Get the government involved, control private actions, and get to the results that everyone wants, a better environment. Sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes we have to regulate. We may cap the amount of air pollution. We may cap the amount of fishing. We may control how many people enter a public area like a national park. That may be necessary. But in addition to that, we can harness the forces of markets, namely getting the incentives right, so that people themselves will take care of it. An example after example, from fisheries to forests to land to water, and even in air, when people own the environment, when people have a stake in the environment, they take care of it. I like to put it this way: no one washes a rental car except Hertz. If we can find ways to make the environment an asset, people will take care of it. People often think that markets and the environment are at odds with one another. But to the contrary, free markets and the environment go hand in hand. In the first place, free markets are the key to economic growth, and that is the key to environmental stewardship. If you think about how countries such as Russia, Venezuela, and other socialist countries have dealt with the environment, you immediately envision a case where the lack of growth has made it virtually impossible for people to be concerned for the environment as we are in wealthy countries like the United States or Great Britain. The second way in which free markets and the environment go together is that free markets provide the positive incentive for people to steward the environment. People who own the land take care of it. People who own water take care of it. That's the key to free market environmentalism. Virtually every environmental problem is a result of what economists call the tragedy of the commons. Compare public and private bathrooms. Public bathrooms are open to everyone and generally not well kept. Private bathrooms are owned by the house owner and they are taken care of. Perhaps the best example is a fishery, an open ocean fishery where anyone who wants can enter and catch fish, as many as they want. They are overfished, and as a result, the cost of fishing goes up, the number of fishes go down, and we have the tragedy. The way to avoid the tragedy of the commons is to create ownership, just as with the private bathroom. If we can find ways to create ownership of fisheries, of forests, of land, of water, of air, then we can solve the problem using property rights and markets. It is easy to think that free markets operate without government, but to the contrary, government plays a key role in defining and enforcing property rights. If we can establish property rights and the government does its job, then we take care of the environment. Fisheries are a classic case. They are a tragedy of the commons if they're open to everyone. But if the government limits the number of people and in fact creates property rights to the fisheries, which it has done in many places around the world, then it carries out its role as a defender of property rights and markets can work. Where those property rights have been created in fisheries, not only do people steward their boats, which they own, but they steward the actual fish stocks. That means we have healthier fish stocks, lower costs of fishing, and we get all the benefits of free markets. But that only happens if government does its job, defending property rights. One of my favorite examples of free market environmentalism is what I call buy that fish a drink. Groups around the country have formed to raise money and use that money to buy water to leave it in stream to protect habitat for spawning salmon, steelhead, trout, and other aquatic life. When they do that, they reward the person who saves water and leaves it in the stream, and the groups benefit by getting the additional habitat. Another example that's one of my favorites is the Rainy Preserve, an Audubon Society bird sanctuary in Louisiana. It was set up to preserve birds. They were asked if they would allow oil development in the reserve, and initially said no. But when the oil company agreed to do it their way, that is the Audubon Society's way, they opened the sanctuary to very careful drilling. As they put it, when the birds move in, the hard hats move out. It's a perfect example of an environmental group taking care of what it cares about, birds and bird habitat, while also making money and allowing for oil development. These kinds of examples suggest that there is plenty more that environmental entrepreneurs can do by finding ways to preserve the environment using markets. Free market environmentalism is not about selling the environment to private companies. It's about stewarding the environment with private ownership. Let's start with the example of national parks. I'm often asked, should we sell Yellowstone? We don't have to sell Yellowstone, but we can use the principles of markets to make the management of Yellowstone better. A few years ago, they raised the fishing fee for Yellowstone, and they kept the fishing fee in Yellowstone to preserve fisheries. Every fisherman who goes to that park today buys a license and understands that he is paying to preserve that which he or she wants. That's an example of markets at work without selling the environment. We don't have to sell the environment even when we get the private market involved. To the case of fisheries, generally countries have given away the rights to fish, but created secure rights so that people who hold the right to fish can trade them and steward them. We've tried the same thing with air quality. We've given out the right to a certain level of sulfur emissions under the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990. If people have the right to emit sulfur and other people want to emit sulfur, they pay those people who reduce emissions, and then those people in turn profit. The result is, in the case of the sulfur emissions, we not only reduced sulfur emissions greatly, we did it at far lower costs than we ever could have done at regulation. Again, it's not a matter of selling the environment, it's a matter of stewarding the environment. Thanks for watching Office Hours. If you have further questions, leave them in the comment box below.